On this episode of Booked on Rock, legendary music promoter and longtime VP of Columbia Records, Paul Rappaport. Paul shares the behind-the-scenes moments promoting legendary artists like Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Pink Floyd, and a whole lot more. That's next.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock. I'm Eric Senich. Our guest is legendary music business veteran and former VP of Columbia Records, Paul Rappaport. He is the author of Gliders Over Hollywood, Airships, Airplay, and the Art of Rock Promotion. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I just watched your show with Liberty DeVito, who's an old friend of mine.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, Liberty. Yeah, that's definitely the most popular episode on this podcast thus far. So it was great to have him on. I have so many questions about all these artists that you know and worked with, but
yeah, sure.
Let's start before working for Columbia. You were a musician. So talk about your background and what led to the Columbia job. Also, how did Tony Bennett play a big role in the early part of your career?
For me, it's always been about the music. If you read in the book, ever since I'm a little kid, music does something for me, even at an early age. You know, I'm listening to even sort of child rhymes, but there's messages that are infiltrating. And growing up, I used to on Sunday mornings watch a show on TV in the 50s. There's not a lot on television on Sunday mornings. And there was a guy who had a car lot, famous car salesman, Cal Worthington, and he had a show live from his car lot. And he would have upcoming country artists play. And then in between him showing you the cars, that he had for sale. But so it was live, so it was very intriguing. And it was the first time that I really saw guitars. I knew what a guitar was, but I'm 7 years old and I'm looking at this and I'm amazed by all these guitars, and they all look different, and each one has a different sound, and they seem like they have different souls, and this music that's coming out of them, is important because they're songs that people are writing. And I was just, infatuated with the whole idea. And at 7 years old, I told my parents I need to learn how to play guitar. So long story short, the woman comes to the house and said she thought I might have problems with what she called a traditional Spanish style guitar, because she said, maybe my fingers would have trouble putting the strings down. I don't really know what the true story was, but I got enrolled in a lap steel program, which it was like steel guitars, like pedal steel, only without the pedals.
Yeah, lap steel guitars, very cool.
So, there was a guy on Country Music Time, a guy named Red Rhodes. He became a very famous session musician. And this guy, Red, he looked so cool, and he was playing this steel. And I went, well, that looks cool. Maybe some of that cool, will flow into me somehow. But that's how I started. And it was electric. And the idea of it being electric was really cool. And, I plugged it into this Fender Champ amplifier. I still own the amps, 1955 Fender Champ. It was okay for a little while, but it just, it really didn't do it for me so much. And when the folk movement came and I heard Bob Dylan, and I saw Peter, Paul, and Mary, and then I was like, okay, forget that. I'm going to go out and learn how to do this myself. I went and bought a guitar, fixed it up for myself so that I could play it properly, sat with a music book and just learned chords. And then friends would come over and say, hey, this? And, it wasn't YouTube then or anything. So, but the guitar would never leave my hands. I mean, I could be watching television and still just chording, just to make sure that I was, doing things by rote. And it's just, the guitar has just been a companion forever. I played in bands since I was a young teenager.
And you grew up where?
I grew up in Southern California, small town called Bellflower. Went to Downey High. As you read in the book, I actually went to high school with Karen Carpenter. Yeah. She and I were buddies. She sat in front of me in French class.
Yeah, and Karen and her brother from New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh, that's right. They're originally
not far from where I am here.
And I did not know that. I just thought they were California kids. Later, for all I knew, we didn't even know she could sing. She was just a drummer in the band, and we knew she had a band. I knew she could play drums because I knew the guy had taught her how to play drums. We didn't know that she could sing until the record came out, and it was like, oh, Carpenters have a record, and we were trying to figure out, why don't we have a record deal? We're playing in these hip psychedelic bands, and Karen somehow got a record deal. But she worked hard on it, and there was a music teacher, Mr. Gifford at Downey High, had helped them out, her and Richard, and lo and behold, they get a record deal, and we hear her sing, and we're like, oh my God, we didn't even know she could sing, right? So it's kind of cool. So the music thing for me has just always been there. I actually fell into the music business. I mean, I did not have a plan to go into the music business. I was just playing in bands. I was playing in bands in college. I went to UCLA. I played in a punk band, an early punk LA punk band called Mogan David and his Winos, which has somehow become a cult thing. If you go on eBay and look for a Mogan David and his Winos album, I mean, there's like bidding wars now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And the funniest thing is, it's a takeoff on the first Beatles album before Ringo was in the band. There was an album called Savage Young Beatles, and there's a guy named Pete Best, for those of you who know your Beatle history. And we literally shot our album cover to look exactly like that cover. So we were Mogan David and his Winos, and we were the Savage Young Winos. If you go on eBay, and the music is on YouTube, which amazes me. The last bidding war, our album went for like $133. If you want the Beatle album with Pete Best on it, Savage Young Beatles, you can get it for $3.50. So,
wow.
Go figure, man.
Go figure.
I don't get it. I don't get it. So no, I fell into the record business because, I played dances for the fraternity I was in. They knew that I was into music because I had stacks of amps and guitars, and I'm always practicing. And one day, Columbia Records was looking for a college representative. A number of the record companies, the bigger ones, had started college representative programs because they wanted street teams, because you have to realize all this new music was happening. Late 60s, early 70s, all this new music that the record companies are not used to. They're used to, 1950s kinds of music. And then, okay, the new artist for them, for Columbia, Neil Diamond's a big star for them, and Barbra Streisand, and they're making their money with pop music. And all of a sudden they signed Bob Dylan, and he becomes something. And then, Clive Davis had signed Janis Joplin, and all this new music's exploding. And they're going, we need kids who know this music to go out and promote on campus. And then what I didn't realize was they were also grooming us to be the next executives, because we were from this music. We understood this music. A lot of the guys who I worked with, great guys. The music was odd to them. They couldn't relate to it. The whole 60s was such a shift in culture.
Oh, yeah, the generational gap was seismic. Yeah. Right.
So one day I'm just sitting on the steps, at UCLA, watching all the girls go by, and a friend of mine from the house, it was AE Pi fraternity. I guess my first boss had called his attorney, who was an alumni of this fraternity, looking for somebody to be a college rep. I get a piece of paper with a phone number on it. My nickname's Rap because my last name's Rappaport. Okay, so brother comes by, goes, hey, Rap, there's a record company looking for somebody as part-time, and we figure that's you, right? Because they knew from all the music I was doing. So it was just a happenstance. I'm a pretty spiritual guy. I mean, I think all this stuff was meant to happen, to be honest with you. I mean,
yeah.
Especially later in life, I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, wait a minute.
Right.
I think I was supposed to do all this, but that's, different story. But at any rate, at that time, I just call up, and I'm talking to this guy, and he's telling me about the music business. And also what you have to understand at that time is, there's a big culture shift in, this sort of new hippie generation of, how could we change the world? Could we make it better? How could we make it better? And of course, we're anti-war. We're for civil rights. We're for women's rights. We're for all these things. That it's a tumultuous time, but I'm coming from an authentic place where corporations, in our minds, were sort of like the enemy. You listen to all the music and all the lyrics from all these bands. I mean, Boston, people living in competition. All I want is peace of mind. So I wasn't sure I wanted to work for a corporation. I knew that Columbia was a music label, but I knew it was a corporation. I mean, they're owned by CBS, and that was a big question mark for me. And I'm asking this guy what I get, how does it work? And he's having trouble figuring out why he has to talk somebody into working for a record company in 1969. And he's telling me all these things. And then he says the magic words. He says you get $15 a week, and just, you're going to go to the local radio station, and you're going to try to get, reviews at the Daily Bruin. You could bring some of our bands onto campus. This is what the job is. You do displays. And he says I think at the time you got $15 a week or something, which back then you could eat. If you're a student, you could eat for $20 a week if you planned things right. It's the way money was. And he said you can get all your records for free. You're going to get a camera. I was like, wait, stop. What did you just say? Did you just say I get all my records for free? Now, Eric.
Gold.
Yes, I'm a blue collar kid. I didn't have a big record collection. I mean, $3 for an album for me is a luxury. So my record collection when I go to UCLA is like 2 Jimi Hendrix albums, 2 Rolling Stones albums, and Truth by Jeff Beck and Cream. That's it. Like that's what I have.
Right.
I couldn't believe it because I knew Columbia. I was like, wait a second. You guys have Bob Dylan. You guys have the Byrds. You have Janis Joplin. I go, well, you guys have Miles Davis. And even though I'm a rock guy, I mean, I love cool jazz. I love Miles Davis. He said, oh yeah. You get all those for free. Any thought I had about the corporation and my hippie ideals, it's all melting. It's all melting away. I'm like, really? That's real? He goes, yeah, that's real. And we all trade records with other labels. I'm like, okay, whatever else you said, I don't care. I'm your man. I'm coming right now. I'm getting in my car. I'm coming right down. I'm your guy. He's like, no, son. I'm busy now. Wait a week, right? He said, let's come next Wednesday. But I made him promise me. I said, do not give this job to anybody until you meet me, because it's always been about the music to me. It's just the music. And even you read in the book about my career and all the things I was able to accomplish, it's still the music. Like I knew we had to sell CDs. I started with LPs and then CDs, and I knew that was the job, but I wanted to do it in a big way and put smiles on fans' faces and just celebrate this music, which I thought was some of the greatest music ever made. Turns out it is some of the greatest music ever made, rock music, 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, it's as good as, Bach, Beethoven. It's just rock and roll. I mean, it's just a different genre of music, but this music's going to stand the test of time, which is what we're witnessing right now. And so I got into the music business, and I was a college rep, but parts of the business at that time, and and even in today's world, I mean, it can be duplicitous. I mean, you got people that are a little shady. The guys in the 50s were the Hey Babe guys.
Right.
They would walk into a radio station and put an album down and say, you got to hear this. There's not a bad track on the album. That was promotion then. I couldn't be that. I was like, that's not real. Who's going to believe that? And so I was having trouble knowing if I was going to fit in to, did I need to be that to do promotion or
right.
A&R or anything. Even the A&R guys I met seemed a little, it's not as authentic as the generation I'm coming from. As you read in the book, at first I thought it was a chance meeting. Now I think it was a complete destiny meeting. I went to a party for Tony Bennett. He had a new album out, and there was a big party in a hotel. Typical Hollywood party, booze, food, people dancing, whatever else they're doing. And I'm looking around and I'm going, these people are having a great time. I don't know if any of them have heard Tony's record. Are they just here for the party? Because I don't get the sense that there's a connection. It's bothering me. Like, hey, I don't like this. Party's over, they leave. I go up to Tony. I'm a punk, man. I'm just, I got hair out to here. I got, mustache, goatee. You see pictures of me in the book. At that time, I didn't even have the fro yet. I was still like the surfer dude. But at any rate, I just went up to him and I just asked him, and I'm young. I don't even have a filter. I just said, Tony, I think I probably called him Mr. Bennett. I said, man, can I talk to you? He goes, sure. I said, I'm brand new to the business. I'm a college rep. I'm about to enter this business, but I don't know if I can do it because everywhere I look, it just seems kind of fake. I go, look at this party. Everybody's here and they're drinking your booze and they're eating your food. And honestly, Tony, a lot of these people are just hangers on. Like, I don't even know if they care about your album. And I heard your album, it's really cool. And I just don't like this. So I was getting ready. He was still in his sort of ass-cut and pipe phase at that time. I was getting ready for this Tony Bennett, sort of amazing flower-like language. He looks down at me and he goes, you know what, Paul? Sometimes it's pretty fucked up. And it just blew my mind. Like, here's Tony Bennett, right? And I'm going, oh, wait a minute. And he goes, listen, I'm going to tell you a story. And the guy's immediately cool to me. Like, he's just down to earth, which Tony Bennett, for anybody who ever met him, he's like the everyman. That's how he is. It's just who he is. He goes, you know what? I'm going to tell you a story. I've had some really big hits in my life. Left My Heart in San Francisco, made me a world citizen. But then the music changed. And now all of a sudden I found myself, I don't know where I am now. Like, maybe I'm out of popularity because, now there's the British invasion and whatever. I didn't know what to do. He said, I went to see a good friend of mine, Duke Ellington. I said, Duke, I don't know, should I remake myself? What do I do? And Duke said, Tony, the business is fickle. People are fickle. don't you dare change who you are. You are an apple. You're the best Tony Bennett apple we have. Do not try to change yourself into an orange. It's not going to work for you, and you're just going to get lost. And if you remain true to yourself, you'll see you're a great artist. The world will come back. It'll come back and find you for who you are. And he looked at me and he said, Paul, I'm going to tell you what Duke told me. Same thing. You seem like a really good kid. He goes, the most important thing is that you love music. In this business, that's the most important thing. I can tell that you just love music. You'll be fine. You just do it your way. You don't have to be like anybody else. If you go in and you have to talk about an album, talk about the tracks that you like, think about the positive things, but you do not have to be like some of these people you're seeing to be successful in this business. And when I walked out of that party, my whole life changed. Like, it was just a big load off my back. I was like, okay, wow, thanks, Tony. I'm going to now decide how can I do this my way. And as you read in the book, I have a very creative mind. So I'm doing crazy shit, but
but it turns out that passion, that love for music is what sold it even more so.
It is what sold it
sincere.
Even more so. Yeah, that's what he was trying to tell me. It's sincerity. And look what happened to him. I mean, I have this great career. He turns out, winds up on MTV with the Chili Peppers. Next thing you know, 25-year-olds are listening to Tony Bennett. I mean, his whole career just, shot to the moon again. So
with Floyd jumping on his shoulders.
Yeah, no, it's bad.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tony and I became good friends. I would work a lot with him. You want to talk about a work ethic? I wanted to take rock bands that I work with come with me on the road with Tony Bennett. Okay. You want to see what a work ethic is? You want to know how you stay great and you remain a superstar your whole life? Watch this guy's work ethic. He's early to rehearsal. There's no attitude. It's just, what do we need to do? Let's get it done. Oh, I already did this on the plane. What's next? There's no shenanigans. There's no bullshit. And the greats, who have been known to party, whatever, the Rolling Stones, whatever, they still have a work ethic. And Tony Bennett, I mean, the two guys, the biggest work ethic I've ever seen, the two guys, Tony Bennett and Bruce Springsteen. They're like up here, and then there's a space, and then there's everybody else. Trust me, these bands work hard. I mean, Pink Floyd, they work hard at being Pink Floyd. Keith Richards rehearses the Rolling Stones a lot. How do you think they're so good?
Yeah, the David Gilmour story in the book, he said, Paul, it's like I'm like a 9-to-5er. I'm going to work every day and I'm doing the Pink Floyd thing.
That's what he told me. He said, just like you go to the office with your briefcase, I go to the office with my guitar case. I have to be the best Pink Floyd I can be. I know what it is. I know what the job is. I have to be that way. I have to be one step ahead. I always have to do the next show has to be greater than the one before. And he said, people, they think that we like smoke a fat one and sit around and just play, because that thing could be farther from the truth. And you see this in all the people that have been around for years and years and years. You read about it. If you read Keith's book, you read about the work ethic, what they have to do. And, my God, Mick Jagger, geez, you talk about a business guy. The wheels are turning in him all the time. So they are working really hard. I'll tell you a story that's not in the book. An Eric Senich exclusive. Yeah. I was working with a singer-songwriter, and he was working with Bruce. Went over to Bruce's house, and Bruce was talking to him about the work ethic, about writing, and Bruce is very cerebral. Bruce works at writing. Clarence Clemens used to tell me that Bruce had to write 4 songs to get one. That's how Clarence put it. No, Bruce writes 4 songs and then it turns into one. And the kid said to Bruce, because Bruce had made it by then, and he's got a big spread, right? Bruce is saying, look, you always got to mash the potatoes. You got to mash the potatoes. And the kid looks around and he goes, well, it's probably easier having all this, right? And Bruce goes, no, it's not. It doesn't matter. You still have to mash the potatoes, right? All of this, if you can get this, great, if you're successful, but it doesn't get any easier. It's like you still have to mash potatoes. I thought it was a great, and
the bigger you get, the more expectations there are.
Oh, that's the hardest part. I mean, now, because most bands have this magical time in their life where it's just this artistic explosion, and maybe they have 3 or 4 albums, and it seems to be that way. And certain bands like the Rolling Stones will have phases. They'll go in and out, and then they'll have a really good phase of 3 or 4 albums, and another phase of 3 or 4 albums. Certainly it's been that way for Bruce and others. But I think that you're held to those magic moments. If you're Bob Dylan, you're held to Times They Are Changing, and you're held to Subterranean, Homesick Blues, Hurricane, Blood on the Tracks. they're genius records, and you're held to that bar, So
Yeah.
it gets harder. Yeah.
Well, you were there for Born in the USA. That was Columbia.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It
So
was.
that was an interesting period because he had Nebraska prior to that.
Yes.
You
Go
were expecting, Columbia was expecting Born in the USA to come earlier, but then Bruce decided, I'm not ready yet. These are the songs I want to do.
I think that what was happening in Bruce's mind, I think he could feel it coming. And I think that he wanted to try to negotiate being a rock star, which you can try to, and then it just takes you over. And I think he just wanted he could feel it coming. And I think he just wanted to do something very spare and real and honest before, the big hit machine was going to take over. And
That's interesting.
yeah, that's what I think. I think that's what that was about. Can I just hold this off for a second and do something from the gut here, because the next record is going to be just, a blowout. And I think that's why he did it. And I think that he negotiated Born in the USA, pretty well. But, it's rock stardom. It's funny. People only see the bright side of it. They don't see it's part of it. It's really hard. And you say that to people, they go, oh, don't tell me that. These guys got more money than God. They're playing on stage. They're doing all these things, but they're still human. And you go on the road, it's hard to keep a marriage together on the road. Lucky for Bruce, his wife joined the band. So
Right.
easier for him, but it's hard. It's a hard life. Right? On the road is a hard life. Doesn't make for great marriages. It's difficult to keep a marriage when when you do this for a living. And then all of a sudden you get all this money. And then you're like paranoid, like, oh, God, do I keep all this money? Everybody's wants to touch you for money. All of a sudden people come out of the woodwork. It's like, now you've got all this money. I mean, I talked to, I don't want to mention his name, but a very, very famous superstar singer, frontman, who said, I finally made it big. I have all this money. I have a daughter who was out of wedlock, but it's somebody he still, takes care of and wants to take care of. And she's asking me for money, and I don't know what to do. I kept trying to tell her, if I give you all this money, it's going to ruin you, right? But if I don't give her the money, then she looks at me like I'm some bad guy or something. It's like it's a walk this fine line of all this kind of stuff. So
everybody wants something from you, and you have to learn to say no.
It's I saw stuff again, and this is another story that isn't in the book. But I was on a plane with Mick Jagger once. We were doing a promotional tour for She's the Boss, his first solo album, and I'm sitting in first class with Mick, and the woman in the back of the plane wants his autograph. So the flight attendant comes up and says, "Hey, woman wants your autograph." So Mick's a cool guy. He says, "Oh, okay." So I open my briefcase. I've got like one of those promotional pictures, Mick, She's the Boss. Asks for her name, signs a thing, sends it back. 5 minutes later, there's like a commotion. We're hearing commotion. We don't know what's going on. The flight attendant comes back. She goes, now she wants one for her daughter. And Mick's like, come on. Like, I'm working. I'm trying. Just tell her thanks, but no thanks. I was happy to give her one, and just let her be happy. But the woman goes nuts. She throws a fit.
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing her yelling things like, who do you think you are? You think you're some big rock star? You can't give me 2 autographs. I mean, obnoxious. I mean, horrible, embarrassing. She's embarrassing herself. She's embarrassing everybody on the plane. And they had to calm her down. And I looked at Mick and I said, does this kind of thing happen a lot? And he looked at me really evenly and he said, Rapp, you have no idea. And my knees buckled.
Yeah.
Just the way he said it. Like it wasn't Mick Jagger, the rock star. It was just a guy, right? You have no idea. And I began to think of the kinds of things that could happen. Keith even writes in his book, when the girls were ripping their clothes off, everybody wanted to be a rock star, but he was actually afraid for his life because it got very physical.
Sure.
I mean, girls were like he thought he was going to suffocate sometimes. I mean, so I'm not saying they don't like being rock stars, because clearly, they're on stage for a reason. That's what they love to do. But there's another side. There's a friend of mine who wrote a book, and John Mellencamp's in the book, and he literally says in this book, if you think that you want to be on stage and be a rock star or whatever, just let me tell you, it's not what you think it is. And when you see me on stage and I look like I'm having a good time, I am, but I am working really hard. Do not think I'm just getting up there and having a good time and all the other stuff that goes with it. Just be prepared. It's not what you think it is. And it's healthy advice for, for anybody who's coming up who wants to do this for a living.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Patience, boys. All good things to those who wait.
Now, as far as the hard work that you would have to put in for a band, say it's an unknown band, what's the key to getting an unknown band attention? Like getting a record played at rock radio was not easy.
It's not easy because programmers program radio in a safe manner. They need ratings. If you play something new, there's a chance somebody could tune out if you're not playing something new that they're going to like. And so new music would be added to rock stations. I was involved in the heyday of rock from the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s. New music has to be spoon-fed. Maybe you're going to play a track at night or maybe in the afternoon, but you're not just going to put a flood of new music on. And also, most bands that are really good, they have their own sound. So for instance, early on for Bruce Springsteen, I did 12 years for Columbia Records on the West Coast in Los Angeles before I moved to run the rock department in 1980 to New York. If you're on the West Coast, those rock stations are, local band Van Halen. So you're going to hear a lot of Van Halen. You're going to hear a lot of Led Zeppelin. You're going to hear that kind of rock. Now this guy comes along named Bruce Springsteen. It's a whole different sound. He's got a band. It's different. He's got Clarence Clemens on sax. Early records got a tuba. It's a different thing. Even Aerosmith's first album caught people by surprise. So it takes time for them to warm up to something new. And my job was to sort of open their minds to something new, get them to want to hear something different. As you read in the book, I had a lot of little tricks. I would never go into anybody's office with an album and in their office play them new music because and a lot of promotion people did, and because they do have those days where you go in and you play music. I never did it that way because they're busy. They're on the phone and, they're listening, but then a disc jockey comes in, hey, do you have that spot that I need for the, or they get a phone call from their, significant other. You can't, I would say, hey, let's go to lunch. And then I would make lunch 20 minutes away, put them in a car. It's springtime, roll the windows down, put their radio station on loud. They're happy. They're proud of their station. They're free. They just escaped. They're on a mini vacation. Like they've escaped work. They're looking around. All of a sudden your mind's open. Music sounds great. If you don't pin them and you just say, hey, I got a few things I want to play you I'm excited about. Don't worry. I'm not going to ask you to add the record in next week or anything. It's not coming out for months. Just listen to the music. They sit back and they just listen to music and their minds are open, right? I would talk to programmers that I knew were into certain kind of genres of music to warm their mind up. It's like in the book I write, it's like planting a flower bed. Before you put the plants in, you till the soil, you put ingredients in, you put nutrients in. You want to nurture up something that's going to grow. And so I felt like that's the programmer's mind. So if I had an artist like, let's say, Chris Whitley, who's not right down, he's not right down the center rock, but he's an authentic blues rock type player. I knew a big consultant who was in charge of 60 rock stations in Atlanta. Loved the blues. So if I would call him up and say, Greg, I got a new guy, way into the blues, totally authentic. The guy's playing resonator guitars. All of a sudden I have Greg's ears. Really? Because he wants the genre of the blues to continue. It's something that he tries to help out. He already wants to like the record before I've even sent it to him. So I would try to do these kinds of things to till the soil, if you will, to add nutrients, to make a garden ready to grow so that the music's going in, not in a way of like, oh, I've got this record coming out. Yeah, they're jamming me. I'm going to probably ask you to add it in a couple of weeks. None of that's going to work. It's the music. And so that would be my approach, to try to just open someone's mind to hear something new.
And then what determines the roster of artists? Who's going to be at the top? Who are you going to put the most money into? How does that all play out?
Well, there's things that we think we know, and we call them priorities for a second because we think we hear a record, we go, oh, this is, but no, the truth is that nobody really knows. The job is to get the music on the radio. In today's world, the job is to get it on, Spotify and Tidal and whatever streaming services and YouTube, make a video or TikTok. It's really the public that decides. We can have our priorities, but our priorities will change as soon as some music hits the airwaves, listeners call up and go, oh my God, I love that. In today's world, it would be people making playlists or whatever, people talking to each other, about what they want to hear. So, I do write in the book about a big meeting we had up at Caribou Ranch where Columbia and our sister label, all the album promotion people were getting together, and we would play all of our music. We put our heads together about how to promote this music. And so I write a story where the Epic fellow, the priority was a band called Mother's Finest. They were from Atlanta. They were sort of like Sly and the Family Stone. They were blowing people off the stage. Like they were opening for big bands and blowing them off the stage. So it would make sense that they would be a priority. And he's playing music, and he says, I have this new thing by a band called Boston. And he puts on More Than a Feeling. Well, when you hear More Than a Feeling, you only have to hear that once. You don't have to be a record guy. People that work with music, we like to think that we have ears. Like we can hear a hit pretty quick just because that's what you do for a living. You play More Than a Feeling for anybody, it's going to blow their hair back. It's like, whoa, wait a second. What was that? And he played it again. And as you read in the book, I said, Mike, Mother's Finest, yes, we understand why you would want them to be a number one priority, but when this thing hits the airwaves, it's going to flip-flop. This thing's going to blow on album rock radio so big, it's going to be like a firestorm. I mean, this is going to be your number one priority, and you won't be able to control it. Not that you want to. I write in the book about Loverboy. There's certain music, I and anybody else, will hear it, and sometimes we don't. The first Loverboy record, it just didn't sink in. I went, okay, I think this is pretty good, but it didn't hit me like it should. It's for whatever reason. I'm a professional promotion man. My job is to get the music on the radio, let the people tell me. And I got a call from Gloria Johnson at KGON in Portland. She was a big rock jock. She goes, oh my God, do you have a hit? What do you mean? She goes, Loverboy. I'm like, Loverboy? She goes, yeah. She goes, I'm playing a track called Turn Me Loose. And in those times, we used to albums would come out and then jocks would play whatever they want. She found Turn Me Loose, started playing it. Phone lines are lighting up. People are going, oh my God, was it played again? If you're a promotion man, that's all you need to know. Now I go back. Now I'm telling everybody that's how records are built. Now you go to other cities, and I would have 25 local promotion people in different cities, telling a story. Hey, the rock station in Oregon's playing this. The phones are going crazy. You should try this. That's credibility. Oh, rock station goes, okay, we won't add it, but we'll play it at night. Oh my God, you're right. It works. That's how, music is built. Now, of course, eventually, not too long after, I go by, listen to the album again and go, God, how did I miss this? This is a really good record.
Yeah.
But you do. You just can't. No, not everybody's going to hear everything all the time. So, and I'm not too proud to tell you that. And in my book, I wrote that about that band. But as soon as you see a band live, you can tell also. You can get a record. I mean, I was really into Bruce Springsteen's first record, but when I saw him live with the Troubadour, I was like, oh, it's this. This is like unbelievable. Same for Psychedelic Furs. I loved their first record. Saw them live. I was like, oh my God, these guys are going to be huge. When Alice in Chains, I saw Alice in Chains. I saw the new Led Zeppelin. I saw the new face of rock. I was like, good God.
The Spin Doctors there's a great story I just heard Chris Barron talk about because they were under Epic.
Mm-hmm, yes.
So Columbia and Epic, like, is Epic
we called them our sister label.
Right.
Well, they weren't as big a label, but they're a force to be reckoned with. I mean, on the rock side, you're talking Jeff Beck, you're talking Stevie Ray Vaughan, Ozzy Osbourne,
right?
Meatloaf. I mean, on the pop side, you're talking Michael Jackson. So it's not like they're a small label. It's just they have less artists.
Okay.
Columbia's roster has got rock and country and Tony Bennett and Johnny Mathis and Barbra Streisand, and it's huge. Yeah. Epic's more compact, but yes.
There are two really cool stories regarding that. One was there was a station in Vermont that was playing Little Miss Can't Be Wrong or Two Princes, one of those two, and it blew up there. And so then, just like you say, now the record label could say, hey, this station over in Vermont is playing this station, is blowing up, you guys. And then it slowly picks up, and that's always a great story. But there's another story that Chris Barron just talked about at Epic. They had Pearl Jam as the priority, So he, to this day, he says, I can't stand Pearl Jam. Like he's saying it, he's kiddingly say it, but kind of half joking, half serious. But he said this, he goes, from what I'm told, there was somebody that worked at the record label that was a huge fan of us that went to somebody there who was really, could make a big decision to really put more money into the spins because, everywhere you went, Pearl Jam had the big billboard at the record shops and they're fully stocked, but the Spin Doctor had maybe one CD, in the back. So this girl was a huge fan of it, and she said, if I can outdrink you, will you promise to promote the spins? And this person said, go and let's do it. And she drank him under the table and he said, okay, you win. And then said, okay, we'll put money behind. And then they were on Saturday Night Live.
Well, that's the record
Rolling
business.
Stone. Color,
that's the record business I know.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, but that's why I wrote this book, because people won't believe this stuff.
Yeah.
This business was run on ego and whim. And Eric, logic never got in the way. All of this stuff. You can't. The manager of, I wrote in the book, the manager of Journey.
Herbie Herbert, the late, great Herbie Herbert.
Herbert. Okay, Journey is huge. We're selling 50,000 albums a week. I can't remember what album it is. But we have to come up with a new single, and it's a timely conversation because when you're selling records like that, you need to put singles out to keep the momentum going. So I have to tell rock stations what the new single is. We have to put it in production, whatever. I'll never forget this. It's a Thursday. And I have to have the single that afternoon. So Herbie called me. Now, Herbie, just like the girl who, drank me under the table, Herbie got on a Yiddish kick. He's not even Jewish. You read about it in the book.
Yeah.
Why he did, but he got on a Yiddish kick. Sends Yiddish for Dummies to the whole industry and says, if you want to speak to me, or they had a famous road manager, Pat Bubba Morrow, if you want to speak to me or Bubba, you're going to have to speak a couple lines of Yiddish. I get the book. It's cute. I get the note. I get a call from Herbie. It's Thursday. We have to discuss the single. I'm like, hey, Herbie, how you doing? Yeah, man, we got to pick a single today. Was machst du? How are you? He starts talking to me in Yiddish. I'm like, Herbie, I got the book. It's cute, right? I said, this is a timely conversation. He keeps talking to me in Yiddish. He talks to me in Yiddish for 2 minutes. Then he stops. He goes, rap, what the fuck? A nice Jewish boy like you can't learn a couple lines of Yiddish? I said, Herbie, I got the book. It's cute. We're selling 50,000 records a week. This is a heavy conversation. You and I have to figure this out today. This afternoon. It's 3:00 in the afternoon here in New York. He goes, I know. Learn your Yiddish and call me back. Quick. All right. Welcome to Rock and Roll Business 1985.
There's some characters, right?
Yes, you can't make this shit up. If I want the new Journey single, which I have to get the book out, learn 2 lines of Yiddish to speak to him before I can get the Journey single, right? This is real. That's why I wrote the books. I want people to understand how amazing and how wacky and how gloriously crazy it all was. This is our reality, right?
Yeah.
This is how it was.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Well, we got to talk about the king of phone screamers, Irving Azoff. I love this one.
I have to get Irving the book. So, or somebody, he would get a kick out of it. So for those who don't know, Irving's claim to fame is he managed the Eagles.
Yeah, legendary.
His other claim to fame is that he was the biggest notorious screamer in the business. People were terrified of him. In fact, I remember having a phone call with somebody who was trying to intimidate me. And I'm on the phone with them, and they're really trying to get me as a manager or whatever. And I said, listen, I've been screamed at by Irv Azoff. So whatever you have, you're not going to get to that level. So just cut the crap and just let's get to what we have to talk about, because it ain't going to work on me. Yeah. I have like the fucking heat shield from Irv, okay?
No introductions, no hello, how are you?
No, so Irv calls. And it was a Dan Fogelberg record at the time, and I had just gotten it to a radio station. They were just, radio has to listen to it. Then, it takes a week. They had the record. I knew they would like it. It was right in the pocket for, Southern California. But as you read in the book, it's Irv Azoff, line 1. Hey, Irv, how you doing? I want KLOS, and I want it now. Right? KLOS is the big rock station at the time.
Yeah.
Irv, Hey, hey, Rap, how you doing? Hello first, and then yell at me. I want KLOS, and I want it. And as you read in the book, that's all he said through the whole entire conference. No matter what I said, that's all I heard back. And I would tell him, Irv, I just brought the record to the radio. It takes a week. Just give them a second. I think they're going to add it. I'm pretty sure everybody loves Dan. Don't worry. And, and the last thing I heard from him was the first thing I heard from him. I want
and his reasoning was, I'm going to put everything out there for my client. So
Herb's MO is, intimidate everybody, get anything you can. Then he can go back to his client and say, hey, look, I got everything I could. And he'll push you to the brink. But I will say also, as the years have gone by, he helped me out through some things I really had to negotiate. And he's really cool. And he goes, hey, Rap, look, tell the guy this, tell it this way, tell him that way. So, and he's done a lot of things. I mean, he's gone on to do Live Nation. I mean, this guy has been in charge of everything. But I do think what he accomplished for the Eagles, even after the business fell apart and he was able to put out his own stuff and make things happen, I don't really give a shit about the corporations and ticket sales and all that stuff. I care about the artists. What this guy did for the Eagles is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. The title Gliders Over Hollywood comes thanks to, here's another great story, a very clever idea that you had to help Aerosmith, who had just signed with Columbia. You were promoting them. You and Elton John on the roof.
Well, what happened was, we always would make sort of tchotchkes for bands that we thought we really had a shot with. So we'd make hats and belts and belt buckles and T-shirts. And somebody in New York decided that they would make gliders, like balsa wood gliders, and they would put Aerosmith on the wings. That was a good idea. Now, I was still working on the West Coast at the time, and a big bag, must have been 1,000 of them, of these gliders show up in the mailroom. I'm just a big kid, and I've been flying gliders, and you read in the book, I'm shooting rockets off.
Yeah.
I saw this bag of gliders, and I went to the friend of mine who was in the mailroom at the time, a guy named Ron Sims. His nickname is Spider. I said, Spider, yeah, we're going to take all these to radio stations and retail, and they're going to hang them, and it's all going to be a thing. But before that happens, you and I have to go on the roof of this building because it's 14 floors up. It overlooks Sunset Boulevard. You can see Hollywood like crazy. I said, imagine flying gliders off the roof. Imagine how far they'd go. We don't have to worry about trees like when you're a kid. Thermals are going to come up. Like, these things will go forever. So his eyes light up. We go up on the roof. We start flying gliders. Next thing you know, we're sponsoring glider races at noontime. Come up and fly gliders with, Spider and Rap. We're like, man, I think I can hit the Hollywood freeway. And Spider's going, no, I think I can hit the Hollywood Bowl. So we would have guest pilots. Well, one day Elton John showed up. He wasn't on Columbia, but he came to see an old friend that used to be his road manager, a guy named Johnny Babcock, who you read about in the book, Johnny Bags. So, Bags calls us. He goes, hey, you want to meet Elton John? We're like, yeah, sure. So we go in. He goes, hey, this is Elton. And Elton's, looks like Elton John with the big rose glasses and the platform boots and everything. He's a cool guy. So we knew he loved music. She said, Elton, come with us. We take him to the record room. We give him free records. He's got records stacked up to here, right? Because we have a library of all. And then we go, hey, listen, before you go, we're on the roof. We're flying balsa wood gliders off the roof all over Hollywood. Do you want to fly gliders? And he was like, sure. And he's like reduced to a kid. So we're bounding up the stairs and we're thinking, oh, Elton John, man, take me to the pilot, Rocket Man. He must be a good glider pilot. Right? What the fuck do we know? It's like, doesn't matter. We spent all afternoon with Elton John, like tossing gliders.
That's awesome.
So I wanted a title that, it turned out that I couldn't come up with a title. And the publisher said, if you can't come up with a title that explains the book, let's come up with another title that people might go, geez, what is this about? And then you can have a subtitle. He said, I just love this chapter about gliders over Hollywood. It's just, when I think of gliders over Hollywood, Hollywood is big. And later on, I'm sure you want to talk about the airship, the Pink Floyd airship and all.
Yeah.
And he says, he goes, you think about this title, Gliders Over Hollywood, and then you can have a subtitle. So then I came up with Airships, Airplay, and the Art of Rock Promotion. If you see that and you see all these names smashed on the front of the cover of all the artists I work with, you'll turn the book over and then read what it's about.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And he loved it. He just loved it. And I thought about it. And I went, God, I think he's right. And that's where it came from. So it kind of connotes the fun we had in this business. I mean, Eric, in our business, fun was a part of your job description. It really was. We had bowling in the hallways in the afternoon. We had water gun fights.
Oh, that's cool.
You read in the book, I had a fencing duel with Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden down the hallways of Columbia Records. There was a meeting called to discuss the fact why the LA branch would no longer be allowed to set their table on fire at future record company conventions, because every convention we were rowdy, in our table, and at the end we'd set it on fire and we became the hit of the convention. And somebody figured out in New York, this is not a good idea that these guys are lighting a fire in a ballroom in a hotel.
Yeah, that's the other story. That is great.
Right. But this is a business meeting to discuss.
Right.
This is normal. This is what I want people to understand. This is how nuts it was. This is normal for our business. Half the people in this meeting rebelled, and they want to know why we couldn't set our table on fire.
But here's my question. Did that change over time? Did things get too sterile? I hate to skip too far ahead, but I might as well just ask you. Towards the end, when you decided to step aside and you said it's time for me to move on, had it gotten to that point where it was not the same as it was?
Yeah, by that point, in 2003, I'd worked there since 1969. People always want to talk about the 80s. Oh my God, the 80s. I go, the 80s? You should have been there during the 70s. Yeah. The 70s was just like one giant party. There were so many parties, we couldn't plan them all. There was actually a side business that developed. Two guys developed, and they just did parties for record companies because there was just too much to celebrate.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
I'm going to need some pliers and a set of 30-weight ball bearings.
What?
If Fred gets here before I'm back, you can tell him to start without me.
What the hell you need ball bearings for?
Oh, come on, guys. It's so simple. Maybe you need a refresher course. Hey, it's all ball bearings nowadays.
In 2003, that's when things really were starting to change, not in a good way, right? Because the streaming services and file sharing and all that.
All of that is, we're feeling the brunt of that.
Right.
The business is starting to contract. The business that I was in was like the Wild West. The rock business especially exploded in the 70s and through the 80s. We were selling so many records and CDs. You didn't even need a hit single. Just rock radio was so big. That's what I was in charge of. But what happened was, somewhere along the line, the record business, well, let me put it this way, better. The music business became the money business. And that's what ruined it. Because all through my time, 70s, 80s, and even the early 90s, the accent was on the music. The accent was on the art. The accent was on players wanted to be the best players they could be, make the best records you can make. We're going to put you in studios that are the best studios in the world that are made for the best fidelity with the best producers. And then we're going to give you the greatest album cover designers. And you're going to get people like me who are experts in their field to be able to make something big happen. It's like a whole village of people that would make this happen. But it was all based on the art. And it also was based on fun and making fun for the fans. Even as late as 1994, I'm sure we'll get there, but even as late as 1994, I talked Columbia Records into an airship for Pink Floyd. Okay, the thing cost $750,000. There's an Aerosmith party for 9 lives, $450,000, but the most amazing party you've ever been to. It was like surreal. It was full of a bunch of different rooms, and the rooms were lifted up by a pulley. I mean, it was so... We were that kind of business. We were bigger than life. If you did something bigger than life, people would talk about it for months, right? And that helped perpetuate what you were trying to promote. But somewhere along the line, it was like, wait a minute, don't leave any money on the table. That's the big phrase. It's still today. Don't leave any money on the table. Well, if you don't leave any money on the table, where's the fun money? Where's this vibe come from? Bill Graham used to build movie sets like backstage for all the bands that played for him in San Francisco. If you were Pink Floyd and you played for Bill Graham and you went backstage, the industry was such a big industry, there were so many people backstage. Bill would build an English pub that you walked into, sat down, had a beer and a steak and kidney pie. A real English pub built backstage like a movie set. What do you think that costs? For Bruce, it was a New York bar. It was a gelato stand. I mean, for The Who, he had a bunch of ping pong tables. They were all painted like the Union Jack. Why? It was part and parcel to Bill Graham was the P.T. Barnum of rock, right? He's a showman, right? This is what happens, It's like, yeah, I could do a big event but I want to do something that people are going to talk about forever. You read about in the book. I mean, I'm shooting laser beams off mountainsides that go for 30 miles. Half the people looking at it think it's War of the Worlds. They think, I want to do bigger than life kinds of things. And so by the time 2003 comes, I had a TV show then on A&E called Live by Request, and I was producing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was producing 3 DVDs. Okay, Tony Bennett. Okay, Live by Request is Tony Bennett. It comes from a radio show I did with Tony.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
that
I
became
remember
a
that.
television. That became that television show. So I had to produce 3 DVDs at once, and I'm getting pressure to put them out. I need them. Put them out by Christmas. I'm like, yeah, but they have to be good. They need bonus material. I just don't want to put a TV show up. I want an interview with Tony, or, here's a discography, or just, I'm taking a page off the movies at the time that everything had bonus features. And the pressure on me, just get them out. We don't care. So I'm thinking, wait, this isn't the business that I was in. Just get them out. Like,
push the
no.
product out there.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. And then everything was easier on the pop side. It was like, wait a minute. Yeah, when you go to develop an artist like Springsteen or any new band, Billy Joel or any singer-songwriter, it takes, a couple, 3 albums, to get the music out there. The band's got to tour. The artist has to tour. It became easier just to get like a young pop star, get him a song from, Max in Sweden, whatever, put 5 producers on it. And that's how we are now. We live in this pop world because it's like a sort of a formulaic machine that pumps this music out. Now that's thankfully not all the music that's out there. That there's still a lot of young up and coming artists, thank God, that aren't in that machine. But the music business has run, on this kind of thing for a while now, especially when hip hop, became big and everything. It just became more of a pop business. So the Camelot that I knew, all the characters that if you watch the movie Guys and Dolls, right? Okay, that's what our record business was, except it was the record business. It's the guys and dolls, but it's the record business. And we're just like those guys. And we all have nicknames. Big Julie and Sky Master songs. It's a business of characters. We're making it up as we go along. And everybody wants to do something to get noticed and be noticed. And everybody's having a good time. And we're making a shitload of money doing it. And it all worked. The 70s and the 80s and into the 90s was the perfect combination of art and commerce that just worked together like this to make all the music that a lot of us hold dear. By the way, a lot of younger people, if you look at the numbers on Spotify, a lot of the pop numbers are going down. And guess what the numbers that are coming up, the streams? Fleetwood Mac.
Yes, you're right. Bohemian Rhapsody, I think, is like 2 billion streams or something.
Yeah, because younger kids are going, wait a minute, who are these Fleetwood Mac people? Who is this Tom Petty guy? What is this Bohemian Rhapsody? What is this Queen thing?
Thank God, man. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, no.
You mentioned Petty.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
Mike Campbell has a book out. Fantastic book, right?
I want to read it. I would love to read that book.
Well, tell me what you think about this, because he talked about having a conversation with Bob Dylan, and this was probably late 80s, and he's saying to Bob Dylan, hey, these CDs, man, this is really great. It sounds great. And Dylan was looking at him like, this is the worst thing that can happen to the business. And I think what he was trying to say is Dylan was basically saying that this is going to lead to, like, people can copy these CDs a hell of a lot easier now. It's going to be, it led to file sharing. It led to all that stuff where people were getting their music for free because it was easy to burn CDs.
No, I think, I think also for Bob, knowing Bob, because I had the conversation with David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, they were all worried about the fidelity because the CD is first of all, it's very convenient. The first time I saw a CD, the big thing, I went to the president of Columbia Records, Al Teller at the time, said, we're going to show you the future. He has a box, puts the disc in, disc starts playing, you hear the music, he turns the box upside down, it's still playing. It was like, oh, whoa, this is convenient. Now, none of us knew what digital meant at the time until it started to come out. And we were like, wait a minute, this doesn't sound as good as a vinyl album because it's just yes, no signals.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So you don't have overtones. Gilmour was beside himself. He said, I can't hear my guitars there's no overtones because an analog signal would just, but not digital. Digital, it's a yes, no. It shuts it off. And probably for Bob, who's a purist, I'll bet you He was more thinking about the fidelity, because Bob is really all about the vibe, all about the song. He's not even into perfection that much. He's into paint a picture, and when the picture's painted, it's painted, right? He doesn't need to do a lot of overdubs. It's not his style. And I would imagine that some of what, I want to read Campbell's books. I'm a big fan of his, and I would imagine some of it for Bob was that. I don't know. What I couldn't figure out is this. Okay, Columbia Records is owned by CBS Broadcasting for a long time, and then it gets sold to Sony Music. Okay, this is Sony Music. These guys are creating this thing called the CD. Like, they know about digital, and computers are happening at the same time. What I could never figure out was, these guys are smart guys, right? Japanese. Well, if you see this digital thing that you're making, and you see how it digitizes and works on the computer, aren't you like afraid that this can be stolen?
Right.
I don't understand how they didn't get it. I mean, they're making both things. Like, how do you not understand this could be dangerous unless you put some kind of protection in? Next thing you know, Napster happens, and then that's that. But I just couldn't figure out how they couldn't figure that out. But look, digital's digital. It's convenient. I don't want to sound like some old guy, go listen to an album. But the truth is, if you listen to, a record album on a good sound system, it sounds markedly different than the same album digitally. There's more space. You feel the instruments more. It's just, it's just the way it is. It's just a fact.
Feel like you're in the room. If you put them on onto a computer and look at the sound waves, it's one big block on the newer music.
On the newer music,
and you look at the older vinyl era. It's nice, beautiful space in between,
dynamics,
up and down, right?
Yeah, so it's just a fact. And look, they're selling vinyl. If vinyl's making a comeback, I don't know if it's gonna, I don't know how big it's gonna make a comeback, but they can't press it fast enough. I mean, if you're putting out music now and you want a vinyl album, you got to tell those guys 6 months in front. They're 6 months backed up because there's so much vinyl being pressed. So I think that's a good thing. I mean, look, we all move forward, but I think that's healthy. I would hate for people to just forget about that. I'll tell you something fascinating. I went to a friend of mine's house, a guy named Josh Rosenthal, who I worked with at Columbia. It's a good friend of mine, and he's got his own label called Tompkins Square, does a lot of acoustic guitar music and stuff. He collects 78s. I went over to his house, and he goes, "Do you want to hear some 78s?" I said, "Sure." Now I'm thinking, oh, this is an old technology, right? Because it's before 33 and a third. He put on Aretha Franklin. He's a collector. He put on Aretha Franklin's demo. And it's across the room, and I'm hearing it, and it's like she's singing to me in a chair. And I looked at Josh, and I went, "What the hell?" He goes, "Yeah, it's even better than 33 and a third. It's going faster." He goes, "You don't understand. The 78 is even more magical than the third." I didn't even know this. You're right. I thought people just collect 78s because they're antiques.
Right.
No, they sound amazing. I swear Aretha Franklin was in the room. I mean, oh my God. So yeah, there is a magic to this. The black vinyl, we used to call it black magic because it was.
Yeah, it also forced artists to put the best of the best on side one and side two. Once CDs came in, you could put more songs on there, but I don't know if that's a great thing, because then sometimes you're putting a lot of filler.
Well, not only that, but it's too much for the human brain. I remember early on when Elvis Costello put out Get Happy, it was a double set. And I was like, oh my God, this is too soon. People can't, they're not going to be able to just accumulate all of this. It would have been better if that record would have come out down the line. Also, you don't have to think as hard because you go, oh, I'm not sure about this track. Yeah, throw it on there. But man, when you have 12 tracks, you're going to get the best of the best of the best. I remember talking to Leonard Cohen once. They had a greatest hits coming out, and they put on a bonus track. It was an outtake. It was really good, but it was an outtake. And I said, "Leonard, what's up with the outtake?" And he goes, "I'm going to tell you what's up with that." He goes, "It's an outtake, meaning I didn't think it was good enough ever to put on a record, so I didn't. And the label talked me into putting it on because they're telling me people want to hear it because it's something different, et cetera, et cetera." He goes, "But what they're calling bonus material right? A lot of these bands, right? Okay, here's an outtake. Well, I mean, some outtakes are kind of fun sometimes. I like there's certain albums that I have and CDs that I have of different outtakes, or you hear a band, creating a song or whatever, and it can be interesting. But his overall point was, if I wanted that on an album, it would have been on an album.
Right.
And so that means that every track that you hear on a Leonard Cohen album is there for a reason. And all these other ones aren't, right? So to your point, yes. It makes it a tighter, more, here's the best of the best of the best, because we can only fit, 12.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Be right back with a snack, Jack. Don't go away.
Bob Dylan, let's go back to him again. There's a quote about him. He told you, people think they're meeting my lyrics.
Yes, which is the truth, because it happened to me. If you grow up in the 60s, which I did, and Bob Dylan shows up, and you're in the middle of the Vietnam War, and there's a cultural revolution about the way people are living life, the way they feel about life, the way the birth control pill is invented. Now all of a sudden there's sex before marriage, but the whole world is changing. And this guy is leading the charge, with these songs. And as a young, as a whole young generation, these songs are going inside of us, where he's helping shape our lives. The times they are changing. And guess what? You are making that change, et cetera, et cetera. So because he is such an amazing songwriter, and the songs are so heavy, and the songs come with so much meaning. And it happens also with other artists too. If the music's inside you first, when you meet Bob Dylan, you don't know who he is as a person. You think if you meet Bob Dylan, the first thing you look at when you see him is the songs. Like, you can't help it. You just can't help it. Every song came out of this guy's head. I remember the first time I met him, and I'm because he's not really a big guy. He's like a small stature. This is going to sound really funny and probably sound stupid, but under honesty is the best policy. I remember looking at Bob Dylan going, he doesn't really have like a big head. His head is kind of small. How did all that come out?
Right.
I'm looking at him, right? I'm like, I know that sounds like I'm an idiot, but I was like, but that's what would happen to me. And then when you meet him, you think you're going to hear lyrics. So it's crazy. Like, you could maybe say, oh, Bob, I need to talk to you about promoting your record. And maybe you might think he's going to come at you with, well, Rap, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows.
Right.
But that's not him. He's a guy, right? And so he would say to me, Paul, the trouble is people think they're meeting the lyrics. I know that I wrote those songs. I know how heavy they are, but those are the songs. I'm me. Like, I'm a human being, and it's different.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he was bummed out if his album sales weren't too good. I just figured a guy like him would be like, yeah, whatever. But he felt like he was losing touch with the audience, maybe.
But I thought so too. No, when we talked about that, as you read in the book, I mean, this was a very serious conversation. He says, "Well, I don't understand why Fleetwood Mac sells 6 million records, and no matter what I do, I can only sell 1 million records."
Yeah, he was ready to walk away, wasn't he?
I'm thinking, why does he care? He's Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
it's like, it's like, don't you get it? You're Bob Dylan. So I'm trying to tell him that, right? But I tried to explain to him. I said, Bob, come on, man. Fleetwood Mac, these people craft hit singles. They're not writing 12-minute Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lone Land, Desolation Road. You're a poet, right? They craft hit singles like they're almost jingles, and they put hooks in them, and they overdub, and they're 6 months in the studio. I go, he had a famous album where I said, you pull a mobile truck up to a dentist's office and go in there, and 2 weeks later it's Roll It Bob, and an album comes out. But it's great. It's a great Bob Dylan album because you work fast. You don't need all that stuff. You're not writing for the radio. You're not writing hit singles. So, your music is a certain amount is an acquired taste. I mean, you're a poet. So people, they're hearing poetry. They're hearing very intellectual stuff. It's not dancey, sing-songy stuff. So he thought about it. As I wrote about this because I wanted people to understand that even Bob Dylan's concerned about his career. If I'm so great, if I'm Bob Dylan, how come I can't sell 6 million records? And I'm trying to explain to him, Bob, it's apples and oranges. But then I said to him, but Bob, no matter, I don't care what Fleetwood Mac writes. They'll never be Bob Dylan. They're never going to write Blown in the Wind. They're never going to write Subterranean Homesick Blues. They can't. Every artist
Right.
I know wishes they could write one song as good as a Bob Dylan song. Only one, and they'd be happy. And they all want that, right? And he understood that intellectually, but he still, in his mind, was like, "But if I'm this guy, Bob Dylan, maybe I should sell, 1,500,000 sometimes, right?"
Yeah.
It was hard for him to understand it. So
I just can't believe he was thinking about pulling the plug and saying, I'm done.
well, he had writer's block for,
Yeah.
it's well known, and I didn't know whether I should write that conversation I had with him in my book, and then I decided to, because I just thought this is real, and people should know that even a guy like Bob Dylan can go through, writer's block and have
Sure.
troubles. And so, I write in my book that he called up one day and said, "Hey man, I say, Bob, how you doing? I think I'm going to quit, man." I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "I don't think people want to hear my shit anymore." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Bob," I go, I said,
What year would this be?
I want to say it's after 85. He did a couple cover records. He did a couple blues, cover
Okay.
blues albums that he just had to get out of a writer's block. He had to just make some music, right?
Yeah.
A friend of mine helped him with that. But I was astonished because I said, "Look, Bob, first of all, don't look now, buddy, but you just are. Like, you're Bob Dylan. It's not a job. Like, Bob Dylan's not a job. You are Bob
Right.
Dylan. So you can't quit. It doesn't work that way." And I know, because I know this guy's life. I said, I know being Bob Dylan comes with a lot of ups and a lot of downs, right? So I get the crazy life that you live, but I don't think you have a choice. And I think that you're probably just going through a writer's block. I mean, Bob, every writer goes through a writer's block. Think about you. How many songs have you written? Hundreds of songs. They're all amazing. Maybe your brain just needs a rest. I mean, that's what I think. I said, just because it happens and you're not used to it because you've been so prolific, but I can't imagine it won't come back for a guy like you. Like, you're just because you're like Picasso, man. You just,
Sure.
and it
Yeah,
did.
Oh, Mercy in 89.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
great
no,
album.
and look, the last two. I mean, this guy, how old is this guy now? Time
81,
Out
I
of
think.
Mind, and then Rough and Rowdy Ways. I mean, the guy's nonstop.
The song he made on JFK's assassination is still mind blowing to me. That's Murder Most Foul. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
That-
he's the Shakespeare of our time. I mean,
Yeah.
he just is. And I know he's an acquired taste for some people, and so I just didn't know if that was too personal to put in the book. And I went, what? This is one where I just got to go right up to the line and just tell this story
Yeah.
because it happened. And it's well known that he had a writer's block. So.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Right, that's it. I'm gonna be right outside those doors. The next time I have to come in here, I'm cracking skulls.
Let's talk about, I got all these artists I want to ask you about. My God. Well, I want to ask you about the Dylan and the Grateful Dead album, because the key to that was the timing, because you kind of knew like this album is not working. It doesn't sound great. That was the Bob Dylan and Grateful Dead album, which was panned, but you spun it into a gold record.
Right.
Timing.
So well, it's timing. I think I don't know how many more questions you have. Some of these we should let people hopefully get the book.
Get the book. We can skip over. Yeah, like let me pick. You know what?
I would just tell you about the Dylan and the Dead. It's worth reading because that's a complete magic trick.
Yeah.
Sometimes you, as a promotion person, you're doing things organically. There's a couple things in the book that you read about this and Tommy Conwell record going from 5 to 1. There's things that you can finesse the charts. There are things that you can do to help things along. The Dylan and the Dead is I think really something special because it's a magic trick. I was getting heavily into magic. I was working with a legendary, fantastic, great elderly magician, and he taught me some things that I put into working this Dylan and the Dead. And I think if you get the book and you read about it, I'm the guy that wrote it, but even if I didn't write it, whoever wrote it, it'll blow your fucking mind. I don't mean to come off as some ego guy.
Nah.
That's not who I am. I'm proud of that one. It was like okay, how do I get this done kind of a deal. So,
Let's talk about Pink Floyd, because we did promise to talk about that.
Yes.
Number one, the Division Bell album story. And then I do want to ask about Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Sure.
But tell me about the Pink Floyd Airship. Biggest rock marketing event in history, you say in the book.
Yes. Well,
1994.
Yeah. when I do big events, I like to take a page out of a band's music or their live show so that there's an authenticity to it, so that it makes sense for a fan to, I'm going to do a big event. It's going to be like, look here, but it needs to be attached in an authentic way to the band. Early on in the book, you read about the Blue Oyster Cult and the laser beam shot. Because they were getting into laser technology, they were one of the first bands to use that in their production. So that made sense. When it comes to Pink Floyd, they were very famous for their inflatables. Anybody who ever saw the Animals tour or subsequent tours, they had a giant pig that would float across the stadium. They're famous for inflatables. They're famous for bigger than life. For the wall, they had the marionettes. I mean, you're talking floor to ceiling giant puppets. And this is what they're known for. In 1994, I knew that they would make a great album, and I knew that they would do a successful tour. But at this time now, I'm out of promotion. I'm now doing a marketing department for Columbia, sort of a creative marketing department, and part of it are these big events. So I'm thinking, okay, it's 1994. There's a lot of young people that probably could be new fans, for Pink Floyd, right? How do we get these people involved? How do we get them to know what a Pink Floyd is? Also, I knew they're going to sell a lot of music, but when you get to this, what is beyond superstardom? Super duper stardom. I wanted something Beatlesque. When the Beatles came to town, everybody knew they were in town. Your grandmother knew the Beatles were in town. I mean, she knew what a Beatle was. She may not know the music, but you couldn't escape it. And so for Pink Floyd, I was like, okay, that's what I want. I want something so big and so amazing that a whole city knows that Pink Floyd has an album and a tour. And I was sitting on the 14th floor of, or maybe it was 26, I can't remember what floor it was, but high above Manhattan. And I look out my window, I'm looking over the Hudson River, and I see the Budweiser blimp. It's huge. When blimps after they become so big, they call them airships. And it's this giant floating, beautiful object. Maybe it's 1,000 feet over the Hudson, and it's just cruising. And I'm like, oh my God, we need one of those. And I thought it would be a pig at first. I thought it would be a flying pig. So I went to my assistant at the time and I said, find out who makes that and how do we get one and what does it cost? And it turns out that there are airship companies, and they, the way the airships work is that you rent them, you paint them. I mean, Budweiser had its logos, and, MetLife had theirs, and Goodyear has theirs, and you can paint whatever you want. I thought it was going to be a pig, but Gilmore thought that was an old image. He wanted something new. The Division Bell album was about communication. I got on the phone with Storm Thorgerson, who's their graphic designer.
Legend.
I spent a lot of time in the book. I want people to know Storm. I want to know what he did. I want them to understand how he worked. Because when you read about these album covers, how they're created, it's mind-blowing to read about how he does this stuff, right? So this is not computer generated. These album covers are works of art that he photographed. And he designed a psychedelic airship with a bunch of faces facing each other and flames. And I mean, this thing looked like a creature of its own when it flew. Like if you looked at it, you didn't even register as a blimp right away. It registered as like something from Jules Verne. It's like Robar the Conqueror. Like, what the hell is that thing flying in the sky? And it was gorgeous. There's a great color picture of it in the book. You can find it on YouTube. I mean, there's a video on YouTube of a little documentary about it. You'll read in the book about how I had to talk the president into it because it was a lot of money. But it became such an event because it could float from city to city. A giant airship, psychedelic, Pink Floyd. Even if you didn't look up and see it, I put rock stations in the gondola and they broadcast live from the Pink Floyd airship. So you could be in, I don't know, Chicago. Hey, this is Lynn Bremer from XRT. I'm broadcasting live from the Pink Floyd airship, and we're going to be flying by the Sears Tower in about 30 minutes if you want to wave to us as we fly by. We gave rides to fans, would land, and you could win a ride in the Pink Floyd airship from your local record store. And when you got in, you got a Sony Walkman. You heard the new album, The Division Bell. The thing takes off. You're in heaven. The band loved it because they'd all become pilots, and they wanted to log time in an airship, which I thought was fascinating. It was so huge because it got so much coverage, not only newspapers, not only radio, but television.
MTV.
Yeah, TV, because the traffic helicopters would be doing a traffic report. Oh, here's the so-and-so highway, but it's having trouble. But that's not, the story today. This is. And then the camera swings around. They're flying right next to this 200-foot giant psychedelic flying machine that says Pink Floyd on it. And the guy at the television station go, what the heck is that? All of a sudden they're talking about Pink Floyd. I don't know. It says Pink Floyd, whatever. So it was bigger than I knew it would be big. I didn't know it would be that. It was so successful that when the band went back to England, they built one over there, a little bit of a smaller version, and they made it into a fish. I don't know why, but Storm wanted a fish, so I had a fish flying machine.
That's awesome.
But it was very Floydian. It's big, it's psychedelic, it floats. It was miraculous.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Short pause. Hold your breath for the dynamic duo.
And real quickly, I was going to ask you about Momentary Lapse of Reason, and there's so many questions I could ask, but I'll just stick to one because there is, I know there was an album that David Gilmour brought to Columbia, and they said it doesn't sound like Pink Floyd. Keep working on it, and he did, and that's a great story too. But I guess sticking with Storm Thorgerson is the iron beds on the beach, right? That again, no trickery here. This is an actual photo.
If you look at the Momentary Lapse of Reason album cover, you'll see beds on the beach. Most people think it's maybe it's 5-7 beds and the rest is computer generated CGI, but it's not. It's 700 beds on a beach. That in those days, everybody had a budget. Storm had a big budget. If you'll notice, when you look at a Momentary Lapse of Reason, it looks wet, looks damp. And it's damp because it had rained the day before. They were supposed to shoot it the day before it rained. They had to take 700 beds off a beach and the next day put them back on a beach.
Unbelievable.
So, if you look at Houses of the Holy, Led Zeppelin, that's not CGI. Those are real children in costumes climbing up a rock face somewhere in Ireland. And Storm would create these events, photograph them. For anybody who's got an album collection, I can tell you that probably 80% of your album collection, album covers are by Hypnosis, which is Storm Thorgerson and his partner Popal, who did, they were just the foremost sought after people for this kind of thing. And so I put Storm in there because, look, you read the book. It's a deep dive into a lot. You meet all these people and you have conversations with them because thankfully I have a photographic memory. So you're going to talk to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and David Gilmour and Nick Mason and Elvis Costello and Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel and on, albeit through my eyes. But I wanted to write it. I wanted people to have fun like I had fun. I wanted people to see what I saw, understand how things were in behind the scenes and with these artists. And so I put people like Storm in. Otherwise, if no one writes about it, no one ever is going to know about Storm Thorgerson and his genius. He's a genius.
The genius.
He's a genius.
I mean, of all the legendary album covers, I think the funniest is Steve Miller's "Let Your Hair Down," and it's a bald guy with a rabbit, a hair.
Yeah.
On top of his head.
Come on. This guy's, he's just, so I wanted all this in there so that people could really be there through the 70s, the 80s, and 90s and know just how beautiful this all was.
Booked on Rock Podcast. We'll be back after this.
Well, we're waiting.
Yeah, no, this book is packed with those stories, and I could keep you here all night. So let's just finish with a great little statistic that you put in the book. You left Columbia in 2003, and you calculated that you had worked there for exactly 33 and a third years and made most of your living promoting and marketing 33 and a third LPs. There you go.
Yes, that blew my mind. Because I left in March, which is a third of a year.
Right.
And I'm trying to think, geez, how long did I work for this company? And I couldn't believe it myself. I was like, you start and then CDs come in, but most of my living is 33 and a third LPs. And I'm going, wait a minute, this can't be right. And I went, oh my God, it's right. Like I've worked here for exactly 33 and a third years. And I looked up, I said, nobody's going to care but if there's a bow tie on my career, it's like,
there you go.
Thank you very much.
So obviously you're out promoting the book. What do you these days? Are you partially retired? I see your guitar behind you there. You still making music?
I love to play. I still play in a band. We play every other week. I still play. I don't think I'll ever retire. I took years off to write this book. I mean, believe it or not, it took 6 years to write this book.
Wow.
And I'm talking a real job, like get up every morning, 2 cups of coffee, write, rewrite, throw things out, put stuff back, 4 editors, because I wanted to make it great. And it took 6 years to make what you've read as good as it could be, because I slaved over paragraphs, sentences, words. This word isn't exactly right, because I needed it to be great. So that was a job. This last 6 years has been a job to write it and work with editors to make what you see and put all the pictures in there and everything.
Beautifully laid out. We were talking about that before we started recording.
So now, my job is to promote the book, which is something I'm comfortable with, because, I did this for other people for my whole life. I know how to do this. So this whole year, the way this book's gone bonkers. I mean, I'll be promoting this book all year, and in England, it's doing quite well also. So I'll be promoting this book all this year, probably into the next, because of how well it's being received. And then after that, honestly, I think there's a television series in here. I don't even know if it has to be the book. I mean, honestly, with all these characters, it could be a sitcom. You can't make these characters up. They're hysterical as you read, right? So that'll probably be my next job. But I'm not the retiring kind. I'm a guy that has to do stuff all the time. I have a lot of wonderful hobbies. I play guitar all the time. I do close-up magic. I'm a surfer. I mean, there's a lot that I do, but I can't just do that. Like, that's fun. That's not like real. So I'm just one of these people that has to work doing something you like to do.
Yeah. So
no, I'll just keep going until, maybe one day I'll just, hey, maybe I should sit around and just play with these grandkids. I don't know. But,
yeah.
But,
Well, I appreciate you coming on to talk about just some of the stories in this book. There's so many of them. Gliders Over Hollywood, Airships, Airplane, The Art of Rock Promotion. It's out now. You can find it wherever books are sold, and you can look for it at your nearest bookstore, independent bookstores. If you got one nearby, look for one there and ask them to get a copy if they don't have it. Bookedonrock.com. You can search for your nearest bookstore. And then where can people find you online, Paul?
The best thing to do is really, I'm not that big on socials, but if you want to know what's happening, or, I have a website now, glidersoverhollywood.com. It would just keep you up to date on if I'm going to be somewhere doing a book signing or what have you. Eventually, I have to get on socials. Got everybody telling me I have to, so they're going to make me. But if you just go to glidersoverhollywood.com, you can read about the book and anything that's worth seeing there. I'm sure when you post this, I'll put you right up there. So
Cool. Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes. People can get right onto your website from there. Paul Rappaport, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's it. It's in the books.